Hey everyone, this is Brian from the Tennis IQ podcast. Josh and I hope that you are enjoying the content and discussions that we put out week after week. If you'd like to support the podcast and help us to continue to produce quality episodes, please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/tennisiqpodcast/membership. Currently, we have 3 tiers of support: the fan level at $3 per month, the supporter level at $7 per month, and the champion level at $20 per month. Benefits of joining the Tennis IQ podcast community include episode transcripts, participation in book club discussions, and access to monthly masterclasses with me and Josh. For more on these benefits of support, head on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/tennisiqpodcast/membership. Thank you so much. And now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Tennis IQ podcast. I'm Josh Berger.
And I'm Brian Lomax. And today Josh and I are going to feature a conversation with legendary tennis coach Rick Macci. So over the past 40 years, Rick Macci has had the distinction of having trained and worked with a who's who of tennis, from Serena and Venus Williams to Andy Roddick, Maria Sharapova, Jennifer Capriati, Mary Pierce, Anastasia Moschina, and many more. In that time, he's had the privilege of working with 5 players that have reached number 1 in the world on the ATP and WTA tours, along with 8 Grand Slam champions. Of course, many of you will recall that Rick's vital role in the development of Venus and Serena Williams as Grand Slam champions was featured in the movie King Richard, and you'll hear more about that in this conversation. Rick is also a 7-time USPTA Coach of the Year. He was inducted into the 2010 USPTA Florida Hall of Fame, and in 2017 was the youngest ever to be inducted into the USPTA National Hall of Fame. Currently, Rick continues to teach over 40 hours per week on court at the Rick Macci Tennis Academy with players of all ages. And most recently, Rick co-authored the book Billion Dollar Mind, A Practical Guide to the Game of Life, which is a distillation of his life coaching mindsets paired with the neuroscience to back it up. So Josh and I really enjoyed having this conversation with Rick. He's a high energy individual, and we're sure that you will get a lot out of this conversation. So with that, here's our conversation with Rick Macci.
So we are very excited to be joined today by Rick Macci. Rick, thanks for joining us on the Tennis IQ podcast.
No, it's good to be here. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And we wanted to start off the conversation today, as we often do, and we have different interviews. And wanted to learn a little bit about where it all started for you. Can you tell us a little bit about your introduction to the sport of tennis?
Yes, for sure. You can imagine. I've been asked that a lot lately, especially the last 3-4 years. Crazy story. I grew up in a small town, Greenville, Ohio. 10,000 people, about 30 miles southwest of Dayton, Ohio. All right. I actually was a very good golfer as a kid. I had a 4 handicap as a 10-year-old. And my father passed away when I was 10. And we really couldn't join the country club anymore. And I actually lived a half mile from a park. And at 12 years old, I grabbed a tennis racket. I went down there, hit against the wall. I really liked the wall. It always came back. There was no arguing, and I loved the sound. And I just fell in love with the game. That was the late 60s. And this is crazy. So I picked up a racket at 12, never had a lesson in my life. And then at 18 years old, I was the number 1 player in Ohio Valley. I got real good real quick. I played every sport: football, baseball, hockey, all that good stuff. In the Hall of Fame for basketball. So the mental part and the way I did it with just me, my mom, sister, you don't know any better when you don't have options. And, so I was very intrigued with the mental part early on, great competitor. And so that's kind of how it all started. And I got pretty decent. I played some qualifying of pro tournaments, so I got to a good level. But as you guys know, all the money's at the top unless you're going to be great. I decided, I like helping others more than myself. And I got into coaching at 22. And the best thing is I feel the exact same way at age 69. I still have the same passion. And never having a lesson in my life, I still teach 50 hours a week, 7 days at the Rick Macci Tennis Center here in Boca Raton. So that's how it all started. There's a lot in between the start and where we're at now, but I love it just as much as I did back then.
I think it's great that you've gotten into coaching, Rick, because as you mentioned to us just before we started to record, the mental side or just life coaching is a big part of what you're doing out there, and truly tennis is a microcosm of what goes on in life, right? If we, in a way, you're compressing a ton of life adversity into like 90 minutes when you're in a match, and so it's a great way to start applying that. What were some perhaps beyond the passing of your father, some other formative experiences that led you into wanting to help others and perhaps using tennis as that vehicle for that?
Yeah, well, first off, great question. I've always kind of been a leader. I've always put things together. I'd call everybody up on a Saturday for football and basketball games at 7 in the morning. The parents would get mad at me. I was always the organizer, and I love to analyze things, and I was always just very competitive. And as you guys know, when you're very competitive, you're going to handle pressure a little better. So that was always like a little bit of staple that I had. But those were the main things. And then I got into this and I just saw that I had a gift to communicate, educate, motivate, stimulate, and figure things out. And I always try to get everybody to be the best competitor they could be. It's not the biomechanics and a lot of stuff maybe I'm known for, and my partner, Dr. Brian Gordon. It's more getting people to compete, and having the ability to forget all these things I grew up with. I didn't even know what I was doing. And that's sometimes a good thing. I'm just on to the next point. And so that's always been the cornerstone, and how that rippled into helping people off the court get better grades, treat people better. You know what I mean? Get off drugs, whatever it radiate, work harder. Um, I saw that early on that I could get people to do things because it was more the mental part, not the strategic or the technical part of the forehand and all these other things that are part of the smorgasbord. It was that part. And that's what I do. As I change people's mindset and their perspective. And that's always been the blueprint, even with Venus and Serena, the environment that I created. So when I saw that I could deliver that and then explain it, maybe a little bit different than a sports psychologist or something that's boilerplate. Because, it's very individualized. It's not one size fits all. And when I just saw the improvement, any coach, that's what you love. When you just see progress in student and you change behavior, you get someone that's kind of lazy, be the leader in the clubhouse, someone that's always walking, now they're skipping, someone that always used to complain, now they're super positive. And that I can probably have a stronger voice than their parents. So when I saw that early on, I knew I was in the right profession, and tennis just happened to be my platform.
That I think that's great. I really do. And I think that a lot of what you said there resonated in terms of, helping players figure things out, be a problem solver on the court, right? It's not just a competition of whose serve or forehand are the best, right? I sometimes say it's not figure skating, right? Where it's just sort of a skills competition. It really is who can put it all together, who can manage the situation mentally, who can problem solve, because I think that often is really an important skill out there. I know you started your academy, Rick Macci Tennis Academy, nearly 40 years ago in 1985. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to start it and maybe some of the early days of the academy?
Yeah, first off, great question. If I back the truck up even further, when I did move to Florida in 1980, I was probably one of the luckiest guys ever. Became director of tennis at Greenleaf Golf and Tennis Resort, kind of what you saw in the movie with King Richard. But uh, who's had the biggest impact on my life is Dr. James Lair. He was the first of the Mohicans. He was the first pioneer. We did a lot of stuff with the corporate structure. It wasn't even with tennis players at first, how to maximize, employees and get the most out of people and people would come down for these corporate things. So here I am at that age, being with someone like Jim for 2, 3 years, and it was profound. We'd play all the time, he would, I would flip things in my mind. I'd slow the ball down in my mind. I mean, there's all these things that he talked about. And I said, I kind of did that as a kid, but I didn't know what I was doing. It was just kind of baked in, double crispy for me growing up. So I became even more intrigued. So that was in the early 80s, and then I had in 1985, so I mainly was working. I just love helping anybody, anytime, anywhere. And I tell people, even to this day, they kind of ask me who's my favorite student of all time. And they think it might be Venus or Serena or Capriati, Roddick, Messina, Pierce, Rude. I actually coach Christian Rude, Casper's dad. Okay. So it's really on the other side of the net. That hour, that minute, that second. And by doing that, that's how you extract greatness when your student feels that stuff. So in 1985, a doctor from Winter Haven, Florida, brought his 3 sons to me. His name was Wrong Dad Ho, and his youngest 9-year-old was Tommy Ho. He was a lefty. He held the racket. I didn't even know which side he was hitting the racket on. You got to remember, back then, I didn't know what I knew today. And he had this severe Western grip. And back then, that was a little different. But he got brutal angles. His contact point never deviated. But I love this kid's forehand, but he was not the best athlete. And he didn't win the sprints, and he was a little lazy. Fast forward that story, 12 years old, the most dominant junior player ever to pick up a racket, 8 gold balls. He won 15 of those things by age 15. At 15 years old, the youngest ever to win Kalamazoo in 1988. That record still stands today. Okay, and I had Jennifer Capriati at the same time. She was youngest ever to win the 18s as a 12-year-old. So I had the daily double, at the same time back then. And so people start saying, hey, this guy must be pretty smart. And so they started coming, and then people wanted to live with me. And I said, whoa, that ain't going to happen. I'll live with my cat. I'm not having kids stay with me. So I started an academy, and I've tweaked it along the way because I'm so involved. As I said, I teach, 50 hours a week. And it's a very different model because my name's on the door. There's like 12 other coaches. So through all these years, it's still going strong. And the model is very different because it's personalized, a lot of one-on-one, very specific. Okay, so that's how it kind of started, okay, back in the day. But I never wanted to have a glorified boarding school. It wasn't about having hundreds and hundreds of kids. There's thousands that visit. And there's many kids that are here, but they come for me to put Humpty Dumpty together. But more importantly, train their mindset to become a champion.
Yeah, so in the 80s, that's actually when I grew up playing, Rick. And, what I recall is that, academies were only really just beginning at that time, and I think you probably felt this. You're probably in some ways making it up how we do this academy thing as you go along and evolving it. So I think that's really fascinating because there were a few others that began around the same time as yours. Yeah. One thing I really loved about your favorite student, right? It's whoever's across the net. I think the other thing that I extract from that is the present focus that you're bringing, because right, it's not about somebody else. It's like you're right here, right now. I'm right here, right now. You're just by you're modeling something right there. That's an important life skill. Is that we're here. Let's connect. Let's both be in the present as we work on something that's important to both of us. And I'm wondering, is that something that you're trying to impart on your students as well, to be right here, right now, all the time?
Absolutely. No, you're spot on. And I lead by example. Besides all the motivational signs around the facility, there's hundreds. One word can change someone's life. But I'm right there. I lead by example. We're plugged in. And that's how you extract things from people. I don't mail it in. I'm there all the time. But anybody can do it now and then, or, on Wednesday or Thursday, every single day. I try to get better because I tell everybody, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. And I prefer better. So, yeah, no, that's a great thing that you just said. And they can feel that. And I can get them to run a little quicker or behave a little better or think a little better just by having that as a role model. And I don't do it because of who I taught, all the national titles and stuff like that. I don't look at it like that. If that was the case, I wouldn't have anybody play tournaments if I followed the Venus and Serena blueprint, which is crazy. So everybody's different, and that's how you just get people to do things. It's it's kind of crazy, but I don't do it on purpose. It's just the way I put together, and then your staff picks up on that a little bit. But at the end of the day, the original, when I'm there live and in color every day and we're connected like that, it changes everything.
I wanted to see if you could talk a little bit more about those signs that you mentioned. I know just, I've seen certain ones like believing is magic, attack with your feet, open stance, closed mouth, pressure's my best friend, passion equals success, go get it. And just for people that maybe haven't seen this, they're, displayed in different places around the academy, I think on the courts in different places. Yeah, wanted to see if you could tell us a little bit more about the idea behind putting these up in the first place and what the impact has been.
Yeah, it's crazy. You ready for this? Some of them are the same ones since 1985. I mean, not the exact same sign. I've had them upgraded and, cleaned up a lot, but a lot of those are all those gold nuggets, those gems inside of me, the way I look at things or the way I say things, and just to motivate people because sometimes people are hearing, but they're not listening. But a lot of times their eyes can see one thing and it's going to stick with them. We can all remember certain key elements of our life that we remember. And you have no idea when people come back that I've coached in the past, forget the household names, other people, they don't talk about the forehand and the angle of the elbow or how I did this on their serve. It's all about the signs. Even Casper Ruud was getting interviewed after winning his third tournament. And he said, at the end of the day, winners finds a way, losers make excuses. My dad learned that back in the day when he went with Rick Macci, and he passed it on to me as a child. And that's always been a staple. That's huge. I'm not changing a game, I'm changing a life. I'm changing a mindset. Because let's face it, a lot of people prefer negative and they prefer, the excuses and stuff like that, and I just get people mentally stronger if they want to buy in. And if they don't buy in, I just keep pecking away. I'll go through the front door, the side window, the chimney. I'll just keep going until I can find that button. Because it's different when I talk to an 8-year-old or someone on the pro tour or a 70-year-old guy that I'm coaching, who's playing nationals. So, but the signs are epic to the point where thousands of people, they always get pictures in front of the sign to take with them. So that's how powerful it is. Besides them seeing this all the time, and many people, when they're playing the Battle of Boca, we have a tournament every weekend, a $10,000 prize money tournament. They're looking at these signs all the time. And it could be a distraction, a curveball, you're upset or whatever, and you see that sign and bang, you're right back on track. So I think the more uh, energy and the more positivity that you can go to flip the script, it definitely doesn't hurt. And so the signs are powerful. And I know that not only because I see how the public responds to that, but the kids say it. And when you say it and you write it down and you see it every single day, there's a higher probability when you're in that routine, you'll become that type of machine.
And I think you just said something that's actually key to the signs. It's not the signs themselves are just kind of like, well, this is what we stand for. But if you're not reading it and writing it and engaging with it, the sign does nothing, right? And you have to build a process around the sign, or, someone like, Christian Ruud doesn't remember that 20, 30 years later, because there is a sort of a post-it fallacy. Like if you put a sign on a wall, it may have some effect at first, but then it just becomes part of the background. And there has to be.
I love that. It's like saying no loitering, and people are still throwing garbage here, But when you're right, it's coming from every direction. There's tremendous value there.
Absolutely, and I think that's the key, and that's what I love hearing here is that you guys are living those signs. You're not just putting them up, and that's really key to being a genuine coach and really genuinely trying to change how people think. And I think Josh and I are in complete agreement with you that this is all about how people think. Both of us are tennis players. We've both coached at the D1 level, and we work mostly with tennis players. So we get it. We can talk to players in a variety of angles on certain things. But one of those angles too is, and I was glad to hear you mention you work with all age groups, right? Including that 70-year-old player who's still playing nationals. Hopefully that's going to be me at some point. But we also know that at the younger ages, there are different cognitive stages of development, right? And, what you might say to somebody who's 10 and under, you may change that for a 12-year-old. You may change it for a 15 or 16-year-old who's going through social comparison. How do you tailor your messages to different age groups, different levels of experience so that they're getting the most out of what you have to offer?
Well, first off, that's the art of coaching, knowing when to say it, how to say it, why to say it, who to say it to, okay? And it could change, not just day to day, but minute to minute on the court and reading and feeling the tea leaves, taking the temperature. Some people you got to be a little more motivating with. Some people you got to, squeeze a little bit. It's the art of communication, and it changes with everybody. The overriding factor is always the same, the way that I am. But how I do it with each person, I feel what buttons to push that day, that I'm working with them. And this is what most coaches probably don't do. They have whatever in their mind. It's more cookie cutter, the way they do things. And how I'm going to talk to an 8-year-old who's the best player maybe in the world for 8 years old is a very different discussion than an 8-year-old beginner. But what I try to do, number one, I always try to motivate, them, to get them to believe, and I instill fun and passion, but in a serious way. It's a very different thing. So they're going to do it on their own. So I just get people to do more, or that's what I try to do. Okay. So, but no, the art of communication, I might have to be on one knee talking to a 5-year-old. I'm not going to be on one knee talking to somebody 6'4" on the pro tour, all these little things that have to happen. And that's why if there's coaches watching this, every single day, they need to be getting better. Like I got better this morning. I started teaching at 5 a.m. I get better every day, or I try to get better. And you're going to always learn more from the students, and the parents. But unfortunately, a lot of coaches, I think, you read a book and they think they got it figured out. You'll never have it figured out. And when you think you got it figured out, you got a problem because you're not really doing it for the right reason. And even with all these accolades and things I've accomplished, I don't look at it like that ever. I'm just one of the guys, and I'm right there with any age, any level. And that in itself is powerful for the kids. You know what I'm saying? And then, you got to know when to hug them and give the high five and create that environment around them during the lesson. But it's serious. You're working hard. I mean, obviously, the repetitions and stuff, but you got to know when to go in and go out. You got to know when, and you got to take the temperature mentally, how they're responding. And you might have to do it another way. Most coaches, they just keep pounding the rock. They might think they got a lot of work in, but mentally the kids checked out of Publix. No, they're not even there. So there's an art to this. And I certify a lot of coaches. They come here and they watch. And this is what is mind-boggling. Some of them played on the pro tour. Some of them are directors of clubs, and they're in shock. They're blown away when they see I go 6 hours straight with people, and all these different levels. And then the parents, the way they interact, the good, the bad, the ugly, the crazy ones, the kids, the levels, and how I do all this. They go, I didn't realize there's so much mental stuff involved in the lesson. They just thought I was teaching them the ATP forehand, and tap the dog or whatever they had in their mind. It's crazy. And they all said they learned more in those 4 hours or 6 hours than they did in 4 years. It's how to deal with all this stuff. And at the end of the day, every student, when they leave the court, they feel amazing about themselves. Even if it wasn't the best day at the office, they got a lot of gold nuggets out of what happened.
Through some of your, through your experience, what have you seen as some of the differences between, certain players, certain, let's say, elite junior players or aspiring pro players that really, that really excel mentally and maybe go further, and the ones that maybe don't go as far or maybe get in their own way mentally? What have you seen as, some of the differences?
Well, first off, you know, I got to back the truck up on that. People have no idea how the environment that you grow up in is a game changer. Okay. I got many friends, NBA, NFL, their stories are just crazy, you know, and they become so mentally strong just by those life experience. No one really helped them. It was just survival. And, it's a very different mindset. But the environment that the kids grow up in is huge. That can cut both ways because some parents don't understand. It cuts both ways. It's not black and white, but that is a big thing. You want your kid to become mentally strong, independent, rough and tough, and all these stuff things. And then you go out and buy them a Gucci bag. It's the whole thing gets lopsided, because they're in the moment. And that's why I have to educate the parents a lot. But early on, if I can start bringing a few students into this, um, when I had Sofia Kenin, she was the scariest little creature I ever taught. She was just right there. That was environmental. The brain doesn't reason, as you guys know, too. You get older. Serena didn't have that initially. I was coaching her. A plane would go by, she'd wave at it. I'm whoa, where Venus was more locked in. And I'm sat there going, I don't know if she'll ever be like Venus, you know, even though I knew there was other genetic things that could follow. But mentally, this is a great all coaches have to understand you don't judge the book by the cover. The book could be the cover amazing, the book bad, and vice versa. So you got to be careful to prejudge people because the brain's not developed and it takes longer to develop. But to go back to your question, some people can have that a little earlier on, more discipline, more focus, um, more dedication, you know. But it's not where you start, it's where you finish. Now, if you have some of those in your pocket, that's not a guarantee for success because as you get bigger and stronger, the landscape changes. You're under the ball now, you're not off balance, you have more power. I could go on and on. I could name 100 people right now who are number one in the 12s, and you never heard of them. And I can tell you many people have never won a national title and they're locked in at top 20 in the world. I got so many of these. I've seen it every which way, go this way, that way, that way. And I know why it happens a lot. But the wild card in all this stuff is the mental game. It's a game of inches, one ear to another. Okay. I'm just telling you, if you don't have the ability, and this is what I work with people more on, if you don't have the ability to remember, to forget, you can't make it. You won't ever get to the best of your ability. You got to remember to forget. You got 20 seconds to flip it in your mind like it happened 20 years ago. And this is what I saw in Sharapova. When people go back and look at all these articles that are in my office or video, I'm saying this girl's going to be number one in the world, even though there was maybe athletic uh, deficiencies. She wasn't going to be like Venus and Serena, but if you're locked and loaded and ready to launch every point, okay, like a baller or a gamer or just a dog, you're going to maximize your ability. Then, if you're taught some weapons and some good strategic things, something good's in the oven. So, the mental part, when that is there, and I have a little Ukrainian girl who's 8 years old, who's now the scariest little creature I've taught. This girl has the capability to be number one in the world because of what I see on the inside. Nothing on the outside because she's only 4'2", 60 pounds, but she's already winning 14 and under events. That doesn't mean anything, but it does mean there's some good things there to work with. So to answer your question even more so, if you can get them to be right there every point, and it helps with the environment. Okay, that's what I've seen with a lot of these players that I had. But Serena didn't have that early on. You know what I'm saying? It took longer to develop the mental part. But that's the wild card. And then when you start going to Djokovic and people like that, that's a whole different animal where they do flipping and visualization. They do all these things that I try to get the kids to do. I said, listen, don't listen to me. Watch how greatness handles failure. Just don't listen to me, even though they do. Imitate that. Iga imitated Rafa. She probably thinks she's Rafa on the female side. Okay, there's so many common threads. It's hard to get them to buy in because we have that emotion. And if you can't immediately like reframe, reset, and re-energize, it ain't gonna happen. No one's perfect. Okay. No one's perfect. But this is the art of the deal. And I stress this every single day. And I do it as much for the kids. I do it for the parents as much as the kids because they just think it's like hit more balls and hit more forehands. But we all know if this is better, forehand's going to be a lot better also.
For sure. And I mean, a couple of things there that I'm hearing, Rick. You know, one, having them look at some of the great players, and the phrase we like to use is act as if you are them, right? Act as if you're playing them in a movie.
I love that.
And, you know, what would they do in this situation? How would they handle that between point time? How, as you said, how would they handle failure or a lost point or a shot that hits the top of the net and dribbles over? How would they handle it? The other thing I'm hearing is everybody's got a unique path. And even if you look at the big three, not, sort of passing on a little bit here, but they all had different paths, especially from a mental perspective, to where they got, right? I mean, Rafa had it seemingly at age 16, 17. Yeah. Federer didn't figure it out until he was on the tour for 3 years. And he said that. And Djokovic, to a certain extent, the same way. All were super talented early, but they didn't find themselves at the same point in their careers mentally as the other ones, right? And so I think those are great examples as well, right? Federer wasn't the Federer we know until he was 22, 23, and was before that a petulant brat on the court who looked destined to be a 12 to 15 seed in Grand Slam events. So I think it's great that you're showing them that you don't have to have this figured out at 16, 18. Even if you look at a Patrick Rafter, Jesse Pegula, they figured it out post 25.
Absolutely. What you brought up is like gold on gold, and it's ironic. Just today, I gave an example of Iga, and I don't know the gal's last name that she beat 0-0 the other day. Okay. She not only beat her 0-0, the girl only won 10 points. And we're talking pro tennis. I mean, that's brutal. But here's the wild card, because I started talking about UTR and playing with playing with kids your level. You can't be afraid to lose if you want to win more, because you know how people play dodgeball with Vince Vaughn. You know how all this stuff works, and they want to start off in the semis, but you got to go through the hamburgers and all this stuff. I said, listen, Iga never beat that girl in the juniors. Now we're talking 16, 17 years old. Forget 12 and under tennis. She's 0-4 against her. She was 0-4 against her. Fast forward that movie to Roland Garros. We're talking 0-0 and 10 points. Now, I know that's a moment in time and the girl might win the next time, but she didn't. And the parents and the kids, they're just stunned because we forget the past because we're all about now. And just I bring all these things up, of people who were number one in the nation, and they wouldn't even play with that person. Now that person is 38 in the world and the other girl's 700. And I explain all this. They hear it, but I got to keep saying it because we all just get caught up in our own situation. But when you can identify with greatness, that can have more of an impact. And I think any coaches hearing this, they should always use greatness as an example and see how they handle failure, because that's going to determine success.
I think you bring up a great point about greatness there. And I'm sure, many people who are listening who are, probably familiar with your background or elements of your background have maybe seen King Richard or have, are familiar with your work with Venus and Serena. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of, getting connected with them and a little bit about your journey with them?
Yeah, well, since you brought up the movie real quick, the movie was spot on. It was crazy. The only thing that was different, my mustache was like yours. It was like a little piece of astroturf where Bernthal had this shrubbery. I mean, I don't know what that was about. Talked to him many times, and he read the book and video. But other than that, the walk, the talk, the nuances, the clothes, the bus, it freaked me out. Because Isha, the older sister, she was there because I moved the whole family from Compton. She was there, so she was a little older, and she saw the whole thing live and in color. But the way that she did this, it was mind-boggling. Like Venus and Serena said, it was surreal. It was so spot on, even the one-liners. But to answer the question, it was May 1991, just like yesterday. Summer's around the corner, getting ready for summer camp. And I get a call from this guy, Richard Williams. Now, I heard of Venus. She was in the New York Times 6 months earlier. She was undefeated in the 10 and under. Whatever that means. Okay, we've all seen that movie a lot. That doesn't mean a lot. Better than not winning, but it didn't mean a lot. And he started talking to me. This is Richard Williams. I live in Compton. I have 2 daughters, blah, blah, blah. He goes, I want you to come and look at them. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. They either come to me or I see them at the Easter Bowl or I see them at a junior tournament. It was just crazy. And so Jennifer, I had Capriati time. She was already on the pro tour. She was 14. She was gone, had about 20, 30 nationally ranked kids. Everything's great. And he said, listen, if you come to Compton, I promise I won't get you shot. Okay. This guy was the funniest guy I ever met. The one-liners were just flying. I just liked the guy because he was just, I don't know, he was just funny. But for whatever reason, I decided to go out there to take a look. I think if it had been summer, I wouldn't have went. It just, and I'm probably the only guy in the world that said their best vacation ever was Compton, California. So I went out there, and that night in the hotel room, just like yesterday, Venus, Serena, or seeing Richard come in. Venus was on one leg, Serena on the other, hugging, kissing, just like you see in the movie, close-knit family. And Richard pulls out a piece of paper. Listen to this. I felt I was in a deposition. The guy started just grilling me. But after a while, I kind of respected it because I'm thinking if he wants someone in their circle, even though I haven't seen the girls play, he wanted a father figure, a role model, someone been there, done that, just because of Jennifer and Tommy and, all that good stuff. So he goes, we're going to pick you up tomorrow at 7 o'clock. We're going to go to East Compton Hills Country Club. Listen to the story. And so they picked me up and that next morning, I get in the bus, the same one, identical you saw in the movie, color, Prince logo on the front. Listen, I get in the passenger side, I sit down, and I get harpooned in the buttock by a spring sticking up. I'm going, whoa! I'm not at Green. I was at Greenleaf Golf and Tennis Resort. It's a 5-star resort, and I look in the back. There's Venus and Serena like this. McDonald's wrappers, Burger King, smelly. It's crazy. Ball hoppers, all kinds of stuff. So now we go to the country club. And about 10 minutes into the ride, I go, this is a strange place for a country club. We pull up to a park. Listen to this. People are there playing basketball, 7:30 in the morning, shooting jumpers, guys drinking, smoking, passed out in the grass. We get out of the bus. We have to go across the basketball court to the tennis court. They go, hey, King. Hey, King Richard. I went, what are they calling this guy King for? This was 1991. They go, hey, BW, Venus Williams. Hey, me. Because Serena's middle name, Serena Jamaica Williams. because New York Times was there 6 months earlier. So they were like who are these little African American girls? Celebrities. It was kind of a big thing. We go onto the tennis court. I brought a box of Wilson balls. He goes, Rick, we don't use new balls. I want old balls. I want them digging them out, bending. I'm sitting there going, okay, I get it, but it was a little different. Now we go onto the court. Ushery wouldn't even play on the court. Chipped up, ripped up nets. It was crazy. Okay. Now that cart, same one you saw in the movie, was on the net post, had 7 chains wrapped around the post. It took this guy 20 minutes to get the chains off the cart. He goes, Rick, I got to secure it. It won't be here in the morning. Okay. Funniest guy. So then he put the old balls into the basket and I started drilling Venus and Serena, just basic drills. Bop, 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 bop. Remember, I had Capriati, okay, Poetry in Motion, Unreal Fundamentals from the late, great Jimmy Everett, Racket Back in the Parking Lot, Low Center of Gravity. The ball was on a string. I mean, no one had better balance than the generator. So my blueprint for greatness was probably stronger than anybody in the world with kids and then I'm seeing these 2 little girls, arms going that way, legs going that way. They had beads in their hair. Beads were flying off their hair. They were going on the court. They were swatting them away. They were all over the place. And I'm sitting there going, what in God's name am I doing in Compton, California? I saw some athleticism. Okay, Venus was kind of tall. She was like 5'8" or 9" by age 10. Serena was out to lunch. She likes it when I say that, okay? Because she was going to eat everybody's lunch in the future. So after an hour, I didn't see it. I didn't see anything. Top maybe 100 nation, whatever that means. Okay. So then I said, and this is the mental part, okay, right in our wheelhouse. Let's play competitive points. And it was going to be me and Serena against VW. So we start playing competitive points, guys. Listen to this. I never saw 2 little girls, and I haven't to this day. I never saw 2 little girls cry so hard to get to a ball. Venus's nose was that far off the ground. She was 5'8". They would keep running even if they couldn't get to the ball. I never saw there was a rage. There was something inside both of them that it freaked me out. And I never really freak out, and it was what I saw on the inside. And they were quicker. They were faster. The preparation got better. They were popping the popcorn, extra butter. So right then and there, I thought, okay, 5'9", 5'10", 150, 6 feet, 160. I'm projecting where because Richard was like 6'3". I started thinking, like as a coach, where this is going to be in the future. And I told Richard, come here, this is in a movie. I said, let me tell you something. You got the next female Michael Jordan on your hands because about Venus. And he goes, no, brother, man, I got the next 2. Serena she knew where the ball was kind of going and she had all the time in the world. And when I say that, people don't understand what I meant. Some people have more time than others. Okay. And some people, everybody anticipates, but some people have a better feel, whether it's innate like Hingis, So I saw that in Serena, but not Venus. So then I'm almost done with the story, how we met. So then Venus goes, Daddy, can I go to the bathroom? Hugging, kissing, just like you saw in the movie. VW goes out the gate. The first 5 feet, she walks on her hands. Then she does backward cartwheels for 5 feet. I'm going, oh, now this was 1991. And if you were big and strong, you weren't nimble. So I'm thinking not only with the right financial help and opportunity, okay, because they were all over the place technically, and this whole thing had to be put together. Not only could be number 1 in the world, I think they could change tennis because back then, if you were big and strong, like I said, you weren't nimble. Okay, they were going to bring a different athlete, a different animal to the sport. Okay, so 4 months later, we did the contract. We teamed up, and I don't want to get to the finish line, but the rest is history. But I would have never done what I did if I didn't see what was on the inside. I knew they'd be bulletproof. When I said competition, the whole thing changed. They were gamers, and I saw that in Roddick. That helps you handle pressure when you're all about the competition. And that's what I try to get everybody to be the best competitor you can be every point because you can learn the rest. But when I saw this in these two little girls, females, that means a lot because it's not as physical, and all this athleticism that was just going to flourish. I knew the tennis world, I thought, would be seeing something they've never seen before.
Yeah, and
And
obviously it
one more
turned out
thing, I
okay.
should, as you saw in the movie, I should be in the Hall of Fame just for putting up with Richard for 4 years. I mean, just that alone. And Richard said, "You're Rick, you're right, putting up with me." But no, listen, great father. And that's another thing I need to say. Every single night, the girls had gratitude. People think of them as rough and tough and Compton, and every single night, good, bad, happy, sad. Rick, thank you very much. And gave me a fist pump or a hug. Serena's fist pump sometimes is a little more authoritative than BW. BW was very like that. Serena was like a little pit bull. And every day they brought their books to the court. And if it rained, all this should have been in a movie. If it rained, they went up to my office. That's Richard Williams. That's why I love the guy. He was a father first, and he treated these girls like kids, even though there was insanity. And I'm saying they're legendary and they haven't done anything. They're going to be better than Jennifer. And Jennifer was already, a magician. So I think anybody listening to this, there's an art to this, but always remember they're kids first and tennis players second.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's a good point, Rick. I think we have to remember that they're human beings first, right? And then tennis is something we do, and that's true of all of us. Whether you're 10 or 11 or on the pro tour and you're 22, 24, if you're thinking of yourself too much as a tennis player, that can become, problematic as well.
Yeah.
One of the things I really respect that Richard did, although, as you said, it may have been uncomfortable in the moment, was the grilling. Because if we look at the best players on tour, they have really good, stable relationships with their performance team. And to me, that showed that Richard was going to be very careful about who he brought onto the team without really vetting that person thoroughly. And I think some people maybe they don't pay as much attention to that. Is this person someone I want to bring into the inner circle, someone that I will trust that is going to help foster the character and development of my daughters? So I think that's super important. That's something that a lot of parents and coaches should, for sure, keep in mind. The other thing...
No, that's great insight on your part, because he became my best friend, and Venus and Serena became like my daughters, and it was us almost against the world. But he knew that early on. He knew that he knew I was going to do this the way I was wired for his kids. And I was probably one of the few people that could put up with him. You know what I mean? Because he'd say left and I'd be going right, or he'd say make it bigger. I'd say make it shorter. There's an art to this whole thing. But you're right. He vetted it like no other. And I respect him for that. And he's always been consistent. And hey, as long as someone's consistent, I can live with that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other point I liked hearing about, the East Compton Country Club, it reminded me of the Spartak Moscow Tennis Club, which is highlighted, I think, in either Outliers or The Talent Code, one of those books. And something like top 50 WTA players came out of this club with nets that had holes in them, a court that wasn't even wide enough to play beyond the width of the court, and it was absolutely nothing special. But it just got people to grind. It was almost like the boxing gym in Rocky, right? It's just all about sweat and work and whatever. And that's what that East Compton, country club really brings to mind as well. It doesn't have to be a pretty facility. And maybe for some people, it shouldn't be because you get a little bit too comfortable. But those girls are all about the work.
All about the work. People don't understand, the environment, the positive environment that was created around them was amazing. But it was all about the work. People can look at it like, oh, they're big, they're strong, they're fast, they're athletic. There's a lot of people like that, and they're working at McDonald's, That doesn't mean anything. It's this, okay? It's that. And So, but the environment, and when we talk about the mental part real quick about them, the art of coaching, with them, it was always about pro tennis. And I saw that they could be there. No one knows for sure. One injury, the whole thing blows up like, whatever. Whenever they didn't get a ball, like say they couldn't get to a ball or they didn't hit it good enough, I would say Hingis would have got that or Navratilova is going to get that. This is what, Kleisters would have done or Hennen. And I'm talking to 11 and 12-year olds like this. Now, you got to have the thoroughbred to win the Derby to talk like that. But it was always an expectation that I will be number one. I don't hope to be number one. It was never about, being the best 12-year-old because we both know that gets over with in a blink of an eye. Then you got to keep proving yourself. It was always about getting better, and it was always about the bigger picture. And I'm an athlete. And I'm going to bring a different athlete to the women's tennis. And Venus and Serena, the best compliment ever was at the after party after the red carpet. They go, Rick, uh, Daddy and you just brainwashed us to become number one. Now, we could have a whole podcast just on that quote, what went into all that, the positivity and the thinking. I mean, they were doing interviews at age 10, how to talk to the media. Okay, this was all talking like that. And I just feel you got to be honest with people. You can't just say you're amazing and the person's bad. But when she said that, or both of them said that, powerful, just so powerful. But that was how I look at it because let's face it, 3 more inches, 5 more pounds, you could be set there on your front foot where maybe if you're still littler, you're going to be off balance and you got a lob like the rest of the world. And this changes. And this isn't how I coach everybody. I always look to the future, but I train the mind to think big. I instill courage and confidence before they even have courage and confidence to get them to believe instead of, oh, let's hit 100 in a row back and forth. There's a place for that, but that's a different drill. I teach courage because let's face it, it comes down to key moments in pro tennis. Who's going to blink? Who has that belief? It's not going to be automatic, but it is more with people that win at the highest level. And that belief is baked in my opinion, okay, by the people around you, instilling it in you, and then you buying in. I think it's huge. And that's what I try to do to all the players, whatever their ceiling is, go to college free, play on their high school team, whatever it is, to get them to think out of the box and maybe even build a new box.
I think there's definitely been quite a few gems in this conversation. Just learning from your experience and wisdom and some of the different the different things that you've seen over the years. Curious in terms of I know you have a book that was recently released, so would love to hear a little bit more about that, and then also what you have going on now and what you're most excited about now.
Yeah, well, the first I've done a handful of books like Macy Magic back in the day as everybody I coach, and people really kind of like that. I just did something with a renowned neurologist, okay? And this is what's really crazy, okay? She's not only one of the best in the world. I taught her and her twin sister back in the day. She was number one in the South, okay, Dr. Niva. And she knew she wasn't going to go on pro tour, but she went to Harvard and she's like amazing. And she approached me about this mental strength, because she studies the mind. And if you've read the book or whatever, if haven't, I'll send both you guys stuff. It's amazing. So when she said that, because I had such an impact on her life and the way she looks at life through a different lens, even though it helped her, grind more and work harder and treat people different, even though she took it into the medical profession, when she wanted to do the book, and have this collaboration, I said, for sure. It's because it's now kind of the way I'm put together and the positivity and how I can change, not strokes. I don't change strokes, I change lives. The way I can get people to think and then have it backed up by the science part and explain all how that works. People are blown away. The response by the from the book has been, I don't want to say mind-boggling, but it has been mind-boggling. And people have said how it's just changed them. But what it's great, it's almost like a journal you can look at every day because we're all aware of what we put in our mouth, most people, but we're not aware what we put in our brain. And you got probably almost 60 hours of private lessons in this book from Rick Macci every day about how to think positive and how to put this in your head every day, every day. And parents need their kids to be around that. There's too much insanity out there. One word, like I said earlier, can change people. And that's what I love about the book. You can keep going back and using this your whole life. And it's really has nothing to do about tennis. Even though it can help your tennis game, it can help your jump shot, it can help your in business, it can help anything. It's all the mental, how you look at things. It's all perspective and it's all mindset. You have to reframe things. Okay. And if if they want to change, it's a process. You got to take the stairs, not the escalator. People want a quick fix. No one's perfect, but it explains it step by step. And people love the book. And I love it because it's the daily double. It's everyday life that I kind of do. I've just been on a tennis court as a life coach, and then the medical part. But the response has been epic.
So before we kind of get a little bit more into what you're doing now, Rick, and it just seems to me that this former student coming back to you wanting to collaborate on a project must have felt like not validation, but a true example of what you have been working on for the last 40 to 50 years. And like, what a cool project to take on with a former student. I mean, how was that? Just that feeling like, hey, this is someone I knew when she was a little girl, and now we're colleagues on this really insanely cool project.
No, it was amazing because she initially won an award for something because she's one of the top doctors. Listen, in the world, you got to understand. And she came down to want to do a photograph about this award she won. And then she said, I'm thinking about doing a book on mental strength. Would you be interested in doing it? Bang! Right then and there. And 6 months later, it comes out of the oven. But you talk about fulfilling and, a lot of these common threads that I've always had with others. And now I'm having with someone that's backed up by science, who does this all the time and knows all this stuff about how the brain works. And it's just so, you're right, it was rewarding. And she's such a sweetheart and such an amazing person and doctor. That's why she's booked like a year in advance, people coming from around the world to get her expertise, the ways that she does her craft. And we're going to do more books together because the response has been unreal. But yeah, it doesn't really like validate, but it did kind of, when you just said that, I guess it does, give an exclamation point of whatever I'm giving to the students, no matter what age or level or what they achieve. And it's not about the people who've won Grand Slams or I've helped become number one. That's the frosting. It's what I do every day for hundreds of thousands of people that is the most rewarding to me. And so, yeah, to do that with Dr. Niva was like a dream come true after we started the project.
I bet. So tell us what's going on with you now. What kind of projects are you doing? What's happening at Rick Macci Tennis Academy? Where can people find you?
Okay. Well, first off, I do almost the exact same thing as I did when I first started. Okay. I get up every day, 2 o'clock. I know people say, why you get up at 2 o'clock every day? I tell them 1 o'clock's a little early. Okay. So I get up every day at 2 o'clock. I have 4 yogurts, 3 waters, a lot of vitamins. I run a half mile. I pet my cat. I come up here in my office. I return every email personally. I do some videos around the world, people with Zoom, because in Belarus or whatever, that there's a little time different. So I kind of do that here. Okay. Then every day at 5 o'clock, I open up the park. I'm at Rick Macci Tennis Center, South County Regional Park, Boca Raton, Florida. It's like Disneyland and Candyland when people come here. It's amazing. It's something for everybody. You can have You can pay $5 to play on a court, and you can have Coco Golf playing next to you, or you can have the best juniors in the world. There's everything. We have our 85 tournaments, a lot of UTR tournaments, the Battle of Boca every weekend, $10,000 prize money tournament. 7 guys that have played it or won it have played in US Open. So it's a star-studded field. We always get like 150, 200 people. Then we have about 28, $25,000 UTR tournaments that stream live on Amazon, okay, that go on at the facility throughout the year. Something for everybody. But I still teach 50 hours a week, 7 days. Like I said, I open up the park at 5 o'clock. So at 69 years old, I'm putting park ranger on my resume. I open up the park every day. I'm a park ranger, but I'm on the court at 5 or 5:30, 6 o'clock. And I just do my thing. I don't travel a lot. I'll go to the US Open if I got to do some media stuff with Fox or whatever. But I just like being here. And once again, it's that consistency that you're always there delivering the goods. If you're going to say it and then you deliver the goods, it's easier for you get kids to move mountains. So that's kind of what I do. Do some motivational speaking when that works. I'm going to write a few more books, but I just love being on the tennis court. It's like my living room. So if anybody's ever in Boca Raton, Florida, I'll be on court number 1. They can stop by and say hello.
Well, I think that's a great way to, to start to wrap things up. And I think, it's just been a very inspiring journey, right? From where it all began, sort of where we started this conversation to, you becoming a coach and you starting the academy, and, the both the high profile people that you've worked with and everybody else, and, writing the book and, or different books, and, just being able to impact so many people. So thank you for joining us, Rick. This has been wonderful.
No, I enjoyed it, and we'll definitely do it again. There's a lot of good things in the oven still.
Well, that was a really awesome conversation with Rick, and thanks again for joining us. I would say one of my biggest takeaways from that conversation was his story about meeting Venus and Serena for the first time. And again, this was shown in the movie King Richard, but it was interesting hearing him talk about it. And, he met them, took them, they took him to East Compton Country Club, as they called it. And just seeing them, and that, their form, at least when he saw them as kids, as younger kids, their form wasn't necessarily something to write home about. It wasn't necessarily remarkable. He could tell that they were good athletes, but as soon as they started playing points, he noticed this shift. He noticed this shift in how competitive they were, and how much they wanted to win, in how they would run for every single ball. And I think that says a lot. And obviously we know about the careers that each of them had, and how they really wrote history. And I think that, to me, it shows just that intangible piece, right? Where it's like, coaches and sports psychology professionals can talk about effort and can talk about running for every ball, but it feels like, and that is certainly something that can improve over time. But there are also sometimes, I think in cases like this, just where it seems like the two of them just had it. They just had that from the start. And it really feels like that is one of the main factors that really led to their success. And yeah, just loved, Rick's energy and enthusiasm and passion for the sport. And I think that just shows in everything he says, and the way he talks about the sport. He's up early in the morning every day. He's out there on court. He's, he is really has been his life's work. It was an awesome conversation with Rick.
Yeah, it was great to talk to someone like Rick, who's been in the game so long. And I think what maybe has distinguished him is you brought this question up, Josh, with respect to the signs that you can see all throughout his academy. And signs by themselves really don't do anything. You may engage with it for a little bit, but after a while it becomes part of the background. But what Rick talked about is how they discussed the signs, how they wrote about the signs, Really he's trying to change mindsets, as he said. And I think that's very in line with a lot of the things that we have said on this show. Is it's not so much that competition or making mistakes causes emotions. It's really how you perceive those things. And so we have to work on our mindsets. We have to work on our philosophy. And and I think one of the things that he brought up, Josh, was helping players to get better competitors, helping them to look at competition differently, to enjoy competing. And that's really what this sport is about. All sports are about that, is wanting to compete and having a good perspective on what it means to do that. And so I thought that was really, really great that it's an instrumental part of his relationship with players is, a positive, optimistic approach, enjoying competition, enjoying the challenge. And I think those things were like completely in line with how we talk about competition on this show. So it was nice to hear about how he implements that, because you go to a lot of academies and you don't see that stuff. They may talk about it, but a lot of it's about technique and time on court, etc. And you look at the players that he's worked with over the years, for sure, some of them have remembered a lot of these things that he's saying over and over and over again, and how important that is to really the development of a champion player, the development of a great competitor. So really cool to have somebody like Rick on and get to talk about King Richard and all of that. So, well, that's our show for today. We want to thank Rick Macci once again for appearing, and we want to thank all of you for listening. For more on today's episode, please check out the show notes. If you have any feedback or questions for the two of us, please email us at tennisiqpodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you are enjoying the content that Josh and I discuss on the show, please rate and review the podcast so other tennis enthusiasts can find it more easily. Additionally, to be notified of new episodes, please subscribe to the show on your podcast platform of choice, including YouTube, and you can also check us out on Instagram. If you would like to support the podcast, please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/tennisiqpodcast/membership, where you can learn about the benefits of being part of the Tennis IQ podcast community. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon in our next episode.